Great to be here with you
Yeah,
today,
it's so
Jenny. Thanks for
nice.
being here.
Thank you for having me.
Team, for those of you that haven't met Jenny, she's a fascinating individual with an incredible heritage at Best Buy, but not just Best Buy, also before. And what I'd like to explore today is how, Jenny's experience, Jenny's history and heritage is really changing the brand and driving towards a brand of innovation within the company. I think when you think about Google, for a start, we of course have had a real heritage of this brand of innovation, and I'm so excited to be able to partner with Jenny in terms of her model and how that shapes up. So let's get straight into the conversation. Jenny, tell us how this role is shaping up for you. What are you thinking?
Oh, thank you. Good question. I'm 30 days in, so let's just start with that. Level set expectations. But I'll give you some indications of kind of what I'm thinking and how I'm thinking about it. I'll start with what my remit is. So essentially, I am leading the marketing team, which is inclusive of our creative team, our retail media network, our media team. I'm also bringing with me from the job that I came from, our store design and our UX experience design team. And so what I'm really excited about is this ability to think about the customer journey from end to end. So the minute that we're inviting a customer all the way through transaction and then beyond that, I think it's a really unique set of teams that are looking at that, and I'm very excited about it. And then how I'm thinking about it or approaching it, as you can imagine, it's pretty overwhelming. And I'm getting in and trying to listen and learn, but the teams are really looking for decisions, a vision, where we're going. And so it is incredibly, I'm trying to do a balancing act. So the way that I've really approached it is set up a very rigorous 90-day plan, and starting with listening and learning and taking in as much as I can, kind of treating it like a learning plan, if you will, talking to stakeholders, understanding how marketing is viewed internally, how it's working with our partners, and really trying to gain that understanding before we move into taking action. And what I know we'll have to do, I use a pretty simple framework, but I know that we'll have to really understand our purpose in the organization, what our vision is, and then the action that we're going to take from there. And I'll do that together with the team. Like, that's not just me. I'm not coming in to fix anything. I'm joining an incredible team of marketers. And so it'll be something that we co-create together as we come together as a new team and really set the stage for where we want to go in the future.
It's amazing how many leaders will step into a new role with a predetermined expectation for what they need to achieve. And the fact you're working with a team, listening to them, understanding what drives them, that's, I think, super compelling.
Yeah.
Your experience is not just limited to this space, though. You've held senior leadership roles for quite some time, and actually you came out of an ads background as well. Could you talk through your whole sort of creative experience and what that's brought you towards?
Sure. My very first job was in sales, and I really hated that. I hated the cold calling. Once I got in, I was totally fine. Like, I'd sit down with any of you and have a chat about whatever, but the cold calling piece I hated. So I quickly figured out what I really like doing is creating a compelling story, and that led me into marketing. And so I've had the opportunity to work at a startup where I wore all kinds of hats. I did everything. It was a small company. I did everything from events management all the way through to CRM. I learned how to HTML code back in the day. You just kind of do it all. Then I went to a manufacturing firm, and again, smaller scale, but a little bit bigger. Really got to hone my chops in brand strategy, really understand what that meant, tapped into research to understand what consumers were looking for in the products that we were creating. This was a company that was very engineering led, and they felt like if they could build it, they should. And so I was excited to bring in this new lens of let's build things for consumers that matter to consumers. And then moved over to Best Buy, which was a really exciting time. I joined their Geek Squad team and have played a multitude of roles within Best Buy, from social media to CRM, worked on brand strategy, value prop development, and had some great experiences doing that. And then I did leave Best Buy. At Best Buy, we call ourselves boomerangs. We're people that have come back. But I did leave and go work at an advertising agency in Minneapolis. And that was just another phenomenal experience where I just sort of soaked it all up at like a sponge and learned as much as I possibly could. And then ended up getting recruited back to Best Buy in category marketing. So kind of I guess I like always describe my career as sort of zigzaggy, sort of have done a lot of different things. I've heard people talk about it as a lattice. I think that is sort of the way you build a foundation for leadership, is trying all kinds of different roles and playing different areas in the company.
Sort of a rich tapestry of experience, you say.
Oh, that's better. I like that, tapestry.
Sounds great with this accent. That's what it is.
Okay, I'll try to do the accent next time.
So again, your role today is very broad, and there's a lot of components to it. I mean, what motivates you, what excites you, and equally, what gives you a bit of fear? Where's this trepidation?
I know we talked about this question, and I was like, I don't know if I want to talk about what terrifies me, because honestly, it's all kind of terrifying. I'm super excited about it, but there's definitely a lot of anticipation and heaviness about the role. I think what I'm most excited about is the brand Best Buy has a long DNA of understanding the consumer, and I think there's so much power in bringing that into marketing and marketing strategy. So we think a lot about what's going on with the consumer when we create experiences. I heard that multiple times this morning. I think that is sort of like the secret sauce of really hitting it out of the park, is deeply understanding not just the data that you're collecting on consumers, but having conversations with them and understanding what matters to them, because then you can create really amazing experiences. You can market to them in a way that is super meaningful and relevant. I heard relevance a couple times today. And so really understanding the consumer and bringing that thread all the way through. I'm excited to bring that into this role and kind of carry that forward.
Makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I've been always fascinated with is the culture that people are driving, and I recognise that this month is National Women's Month. I'd like to understand some of the people you've experienced in your career and how those inspirational leaders have really impacted your thought around this culture of innovation and being a strong leader yourself.
Yeah, this is such a great question. Thank you for asking it. I gave some thought to this, and I honestly can't think of there's a single piece of advice or one single thing that I learned from a leader. What I think has had the greatest impact on me is seeing moments of courage in action. And they happen every single day, and they happen at all kinds of different levels. And so I'll just give you a couple of recent examples. I see it when someone isn't being invited to speak at the table, or maybe doesn't feel comfortable, and you'll see a leader kind of say, hey, you know what, I'd really like to hear your point of view. I would like to invite you to the table. And I love that. I mean, that opens up the conversation. And to me, that's like an act of courage. The other one that I see often, occasionally women get interrupted and someone else finishes their thought. And I saw a female at our company sort of sit up straight. I could almost see them like mustering up the courage, take a deep breath and say, hey, I'd like to finish my thought, and then proceed to do that. And it set an example in the room. It helped remind everybody let's let everyone kind of finish what they're here to say. And it showed a moment of courage that other people now will sit up and do that. And then I think the last thing I'll say is it's not just about inviting women to the table. It's also looking around the table and making sure that other underrepresented groups are also being invited. And I think that's really critically important.
No, I'm much like you. I'm a strong believer in diversity of really any angle. And I think it just makes us, broader in our thinking and better in ourselves. Yeah. Completely agree. Moving into the wonderful world of retail, tell me how you're thinking about your future retail experiences, what Best Buy is seeing, how are you reshaping what we would experience as consumers?
Yeah, this is so exciting. I really believe that we are reimagining what retail will be in the future. And we kind of have all of the right recipe elements. It's sort of figuring out how we pull them together to meet that consumer need. So a few things that I'm really excited about. One, we're creating we call it virtual store. It's probably not what a customer would call it, but internally we call it a virtual store. It's actually live today. where you can use video chat on Best Buy and actually talk to a highly informed, knowledgeable blue shirt associate who is in what we're basically calling like a studio space. They can demo the product. You can see the product. You can imagine, like, most people come to our stores. A lot of times they're coming because they want expert advice from someone. They just want like confirmation that they're thinking about the right thing. Or two, they want to see that product live and in action. And so this allows people from their homes to have that interaction. We've tapped into some really amazing experts, like for our health and fitness category. We've got people who are trainers, like that's what they do. And they're talking about the product and really having a personalized interaction with the customer. We're seeing phenomenal results. It's a great experience. It's just growing. And so I think that's like one really good example. The other thing that we're doing is testing different store formats and how digital comes to life in those experiences to make it an easier shopping experience and easier for our associates. So Charlotte is a really good example where we've got multiple store formats, including what we call the 5K experience, which is just a smaller selling floor. So if you've been into a Best Buy, typically those are 35,000 to 45,000 square feet. So this is much smaller from that scale, but we're really able to meet these customers in this market where we had previously exited. We had been in this market with a big store, had exited there, so we've come back with this smaller footprint. There's definitely categories we don't sell there because it's not big enough. But then we can connect those customers with the right person that can help them in those categories where we aren't able to show those things. So I think we're testing a variety of things: digital experiences, new store formats, and just really trying to almost anticipate where the customer is going and where shopping is going in the future to meet those needs.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. That I could definitely talk about all day.
For those virtual stores, do you see those replicating the full breadth of the Best Buy experience, or do you think they'll be a little more niche? How do you see those stacking up?
Right now, it's a little bit more niche. We've got a handful of categories that we're testing in this space, and computing, physical or health and wellness. I think TVs are in this category, but I think we see that there's opportunity to do it much more broadly. And like when I think about just stepping back and using my imagination on how it could come to life, imagine potentially having a store that also can be a virtual store. So you've got associates who maybe aren't helping a customer who's there that moment, but they're doing a video chat with someone who's online. So I think the options and the opportunity is pretty endless. We're starting small and kind of testing our way into it.
Yeah, the real insect of sort of phygital experience.
Yeah, exactly. Phygital. Love that word.
So it just rolls off
all
the
of
tongue.
our made up words that we have.
You've touched upon this a couple of times in the conversation, and equally I'm aware that Best Buy has come out as this being a really stated ambition, the drive towards health and what that means as the intersect of the consumer and then maybe a broader offering that Best Buy has. How do you see that playing out? Could you unpack that?
Yeah, health is such an interesting space. So if you think about health, technology has long played a role in keeping us all healthy and alive, but it hasn't been terribly accessible to consumers. But what's really happened is a couple of things. One, there is a trend where health technology is becoming more accessible. It's becoming consumerized, if you will. And then the second trend, which I actually think might be even more interesting, is what's happening with consumers. I think there's a lot of individualization. So people really want to control their own environment, their own health, where their data is used. All of those things kind of tie together to this idea that customers want to own it for themselves. Consumers want to do it themselves. And that's happening in health as well. And so you can see people wanting to monitor their own blood sugar, whether they have diabetes or not. You can see people wanting to understand what their sleep looks like. These are just like a couple of examples of what we're seeing. So for Best Buy, what this really means is our sweet spot is taking the complexity of technology and helping you truly enrich your life. And so health is a perfect place for us to play in doing that. And if you think about the companies that are in health, whether it's insurers or big health providers, they don't necessarily have that expertise in making technology accessible. And then we can also leverage our ability to be in customers' homes, whether it's through our Geek Squad or our consultants that can get in homes. So we've got sort of, again, like those recipe elements, and we're testing and trying our way into figuring out what hits the right relevance with consumers and really provides them something that makes their lives better. So it's definitely an exciting space.
I love what you say about the consumer. I often think actually the American consumer is incredibly well educated about what they want, when they want it, and how they want it, and they'll be quite judicious in where they spend their time. So if you can get that right, it's a huge market.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So looking ahead, I mean, you've always talked about how special the consumer experience is at Best Buy, and I recognize that takes many forms. How are you progressing your thinking there? What are you trialing? What are you experimenting with? Could you explain that?
Sure. We're constantly testing and trying in the consumer space, both digitally, which I heard a couple people talk about it today, like you can test and try in the digital space quite quickly and easily, which is great. And so we definitely have a variety of things that we are testing. Some you wouldn't even notice, or they would be like the smallest thing, whether it's like in the transaction or on our PDP. Maybe it's the order of something on the page. And we're always trying to figure out like what helps the consumer move through the journey more quickly. How do we get them to very quickly check out? So constantly testing in that realm. Then we're always trying to learn what works between the digital experience and the store experience. And what we know is consumers absolutely want a physical experience. And so we keep learning our way into how that works for them. And testing different things in the store experience as well. For example, if you've walked into a store lately, you might have noticed that we have a host up front. And this is something I experienced at Sephora too that I thought was phenomenal, where you walk in and someone is standing there saying like, hey, what can I help? Like, where do you want to go today? Like helping you instantly navigate that experience. And it feels so welcoming and personal. And so like those are just a couple examples of like small things that we continually test and try to see what works best for the consumer. Again, you root it in that consumer. What do they want? Asking a lot of questions. We use panels. We do quite a bit of surveying. We also do experience measurement to really understand like what's working and what's not. And then a lot of the data, and we combine all those things together to figure out what's the next thing that we should test in the experience.
It's interesting, isn't it? Getting that balance of white glove kind of high touch service versus just letting people go and self-serve. There's no right answer, but you just got to try and work it through.
For sure. And there are a lot of customers who actually, they want to walk in the store and figure it out themselves. And so I do think that idea of having a host up front that can kind of sort through that quickly is really helpful. Just one example for sure.
I'm conscious again of the size and scale of what you do at Best Buy. It's not small stuff.
No.
And every time a customer makes a transaction, performs a search, has a query, every touch point on that journey, you're picking up data signals. That primary data essentially is the lifeblood of many organizations like yourself. How are you thinking about exposing that or sharing that with trusted third parties? What are you experiencing there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And obviously we have our Best Buy ads, a retail media network. So data is critically important, not just to us, but also to our vendor partners. But I haven't talked about this yet. We really take our customers' data at the highest priority. Yeah. And we do that because we are a relationship company. I mean, you've heard our CEO, Corey Berry, talk about the fact that we want to be a relationship company, and a relationship is a two-way street, and it is built, the foundation is trust. And so we absolutely take our customers' data. We really work hard to protect that and manage that privacy. And at the same time, we've got great partners that we work with that are also our customer. And so we find really unique ways to make sure that we're connecting our partners to the right data in the best way that protects our customers' privacy, and leverage that in a meaningful way for their businesses. And one of the things I talked about is the fact that we run the end-to-end gamut of that journey. And so we really have so many opportunities along that customer journey to serve up things that matter to them and get them the right solution along the way. And most of the time, that is with one of our vendor partners that we are working with.
Corey's focus on the consumer, the customer, has always been second to none, and
Absolutely.
I think that sort of bleeds down through the organization. So it's great to see that rigor and focus.
Yep.
At Google, we are so excited about this concept of generative AI and how consumers and large organizations like yourself are now using it in new and creative ways. We see so many clients that are really embracing this. I'm conscious that it's not always that easy, right? There's a balance you have to strike between technology and talent within your own organization. How's Best Buy thinking about that?
This is such an interesting place that we're going to all start navigating together. I tend to always double down on humans. I'm a human-led leader. I pretty much lead with my heart. It's on my sleeve most of the time. And so I really believe in the human element. I think Best Buy at its core is about humans. I mentioned like the reason people come to stores, the first reason is they want to talk to someone and get some expert advice. And so I believe that we are very much a human-led organization. I think where technology really starts to play a role is in how it enhances that. Even at the highest level, our Best Buy purpose is enriching lives through technology. Lives is first. It's about the human first, and then how technology really can amplify that or bring that to life or make that better. And so I think the same is true with our marketing technology, our ad technology. How do we leverage those things to make it easier for our employees to then meet the needs of our consumers? And so that's how I typically tend to look at it. I absolutely see the power and the efficiency that can come from technology. I just want to think about like starting with that human first and then pulling it through.
No, I love the ethos. I think it's super critical that your talent is enabled and enabled in creative ways, but equally unrestrained.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, it's been such a pleasure talking with you.
It's been
Thank
fun.
you. Can I open the floor up to the audience?
Yes, please. And I'm actually going to ask the first one because I am super curious as a fan of the brand. I love your background and the fact that not only are you in charge of the external messaging, but that you are also working on the retail media side and you have UX under your charge. From a consumer lens, what you sell isn't always the cheapest thing in the world. And so consumers are led to really do a ton of research before they make that purchase. And certainly that physical store of feel, touch, see in person is important. How do you balance between retail media partners and editorial content or reviews on your site as consumers are trying to gather information?
Oh, interesting. Well, I actually think like the fact that it's a much more considered purchase is beneficial to our partners. You spend a lot more time thinking about the technology you're going to purchase than you might a commodity that you buy every single week and has become kind of like rote purchase. And so I think that is advantageous, and it does require us to really think about how we help the customer in that sort of inspire to shop space, help them figure out what is going to be the best product for them or what's going to meet their solution. And oftentimes that is through content. And it might not be content that's on our site. And so we might be an advertiser on a site that is creating a lot of that content that then pulls customers into our site. That's one way we think about it. But we absolutely also want to create content that helps customers find the right solution for what they're trying to do. And we do that on both ends. So you can think about it both as people are researching, and then I don't know about you, but I end up with a lot of technology at home that I don't fully know how to use. And so it also happens on the other side. After you get it home, customers want to know, like, how do I get more out of this? How do I set this up? What do I do to make this thing work for me? And so it's really kind of on both ends of the experience.
Thank you. I'm sure Saif is laughing at that answer, especially, you got the mic. Perfect.
Yeah, only
Especially
because
with
it's
you
so
two.
relevant in my household. That's all.
Exactly.
Jennie, I'm going to ask this question not as a professional, but as a consumer. I'm a Lead Plus customer. I'm really a big fan of the brand, and I shop most of my electronics there. And I totally agree with you. I can notice as a consumer that the experience you guys are providing in stores, which for me it's a big differential, is a time well spent experience. But whenever I go online, sometimes I feel that there's a disconnection because it's a more time well saved experience, which is normal for most retailers.
Yep.
Online retailers, do you have any plans on bringing a little bit of that time well spent experience that we live in the stores to the online? Because sometimes that's a piece that as a consumer I miss it, and I think that a lot of retailers also miss that piece.
Yeah, that's really great feedback, Guy. I think it's similar to the question that Todd asked around content, and we're definitely looking for ways to have content be available. but we also don't want to upend the experience for the customer that does want to move through quickly. So based on our research and what we know, many times consumers get to our site, know what they want to make that purchase and go. So we're trying to find ways where the content is readily available, easy to find, easy to digest, without really interrupting the experience. So again, as all these challenges are, it's a balancing act, for sure. But I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Other. Yeah. You got? Yeah.
Thanks, Saif, and thanks, Jennie. I loved your example about the host and Sephora using that as inspiration. Where else are you getting inspiration, either from other retailers or other industries?
I heard a couple things today that I thought were super interesting. So today was very inspirational. I'm sure those of you that have been here agree. The other thing I watch for, I think luxury brands are always way out front. And I'm sure that's because their target audience tends to be people who are sort of creating and making trends. And so it makes sense for them. And so I always am looking to luxury brands to see where they're playing, doing a lot of things in the metaverse, because we probably won't do that today, but we'll follow that. And so luxury brands. The other one is Nike. If you've never been to the Nike store in New York, and they may have more of these, but the Nike store in New York is really impressive. What I'm impressed by is the amount of testing that they're doing in a live environment where consumers are at. And so to me, that just sort of says like, oh, you don't necessarily have to get it 100% right. You can test some things in a unique environment and learn a lot from your customers. And so I think Nike is doing that all the time. And I really appreciate what they do.
Awesome. I love this. And you hold a very interesting role as CMO, because you were talking a little bit different than other CMOs, owning the full spectrum, both from the marketing side all the way to the design side. So my question leads on the design side and kind of your perspective on that, how that might differ for other CMOs too. But you talked about that end-to-end experience, both for the customer and also the associate. So I'm curious on your teams and how they're applying, maybe capturing those journeys, both digital and physical, but also aligning those to the associate experience, because I know that's a big part of what you all do. So I was just curious if there's anything special that your role is now doing, managing both ends of that spectrum across the team, because I think that's a really fascinating role that you hold that maybe some other organizations don't do, because they separate those.
Yeah.
Sometimes that disconnect has it as an effect on the experience.
Absolutely.
So I'm really interested in kind of your approach to that.
I don't know that we always get it right, but I think what we learned a few years ago when we were really trying to establish this idea of customer obsession and really focusing on the customer was that if we don't get it right for our employee, we can't actually get it right for the customer. So we stood up an employee research capability to really talk to our associates, not just get feedback, because we're pretty good at getting regular feedback, but to have focused research projects where we understand what's working, what's not working. Our employees are also closest to the customer. And so we get amazing insights from them. I think Sephora said this as well. Like, we get amazing insights from them on what's going on with the customer. And so we lean into that as well. And what we try to do, we map out all kinds of crazy journeys. So we've got, obviously, at the highest level, our customer journey. We understand what the key moments of truth are there. And then we've done similar work at the employee level. So what are those moments across the employee journey, which is really before you ever get hired and beyond when you might decide to go work somewhere else. And we look at that and try to understand what really matters. And then the final thing that I look at, we create a lot of digital tools. They don't always help our employees deliver to the customer. And sometimes they make their jobs a lot harder. And that's like a symptom when you're an older retailer and you've been around a long time. You have a ton of different technology stacks. And we're doing a lot of work to clean that up and try and make it easier for our employees who want to deliver the best experience to the customer, enable that for them. So great question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, we got time for one last question. And if you've not been to the Best Buy site, what you've done with the culture of the organization on the site is phenomenal and really highlights everything that you just captured. Any last questions? Okay, well,
Awesome.
thank you
Thank
both
you.
for a
Thank you, Jennie.
fantastic session.